My name is Rachel Wilson. I'm 29 years old, and I never thought I'd be the girl whose boyfriend would steal from her. But there I was, staring at my bank account, $4,500 missing, and photos of Jason with another woman at a beach resort on my screen. 3 years together, and this was how he repaid my trust. What happened next changed everything. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you want to see more stories about relationship betrayals and how to come back stronger, hit that subscribe button now. I met Jason Barnes at my friend Katie's birthday party 3 years ago. Before him, I was completely focused on my marketing career in Chicago, climbing the corporate ladder and keeping relationships casual. My last serious boyfriend had cheated on me with my roommate in college, so I'd spent years building walls around my heart, afraid to trust again. Jason seemed different from the beginning. Tall with warm brown eyes and an easy laugh, he worked in sales at a software company downtown. He approached me at the party with a genuine compliment about my analysis of a book Katie and I had both read, not some cheesy pickup line. We talked for hours that night, discovering shared interests in hiking, true crime podcasts, and a mutual love for spicy food. I felt a connection I hadn't experienced in years. Our first date was at a small Thai restaurant in Wicker Park. Jason remembered every detail I'd mentioned at the party, asking about my family in Minnesota and my career goals. He shared stories about growing up in Seattle, his move to Chicago 5 years earlier, and his dreams of starting his own business someday. I loved how ambitious he was, how he seemed to really listen when I spoke. The relationship progressed naturally. We spent weekends exploring Chicago neighborhoods, taking day trips to Michigan, and gradually integrating into each other's lives. I met his college friends who all lived nearby, a tight-knit group who welcomed me with open arms. He fit in perfectly with my work friends during happy hours and got along wonderfully with my sister when she visited from Minneapolis. After a year together, we were spending most nights at each other's apartments. Jason would cook dinner at my place while I worked late, or I'd bring coffee to wake him up on Sunday mornings. It felt right, comfortable, but still exciting. He supported my career ambitions and celebrated every small victory with me. When I landed a big client, he surprised me with champagne. When he exceeded his sales targets, I planned weekend getaways to celebrate. After 2 years, we decided to move in together. We compromised on a neighborhood halfway between both our offices, a 2-bedroom apartment with a small balcony overlooking a tree-lined street. I loved decorating our shared space, blending his minimalist furniture with my colorful accessories. It felt like building our future together, brick by brick. Living together meant combining aspects of our finances. We created a joint account for rent, utilities, and groceries, each contributing proportionally to our salaries. I earned more in my marketing role, but Jason never seemed insecure about it. We maintained separate savings accounts, though we were transparent about our financial goals. Mine was saving for a dream trip to Greece, something I'd wanted since college. His was supposedly for a down payment on a condo eventually. My career continued to flourish. I was promoted to marketing manager, overseeing a team of 5 and handling our agency's largest accounts. The promotion came with a substantial raise and bonus, accelerating my Greece fund. I was so proud to share the success with Jason, who seemed genuinely happy for me. We talked about the future often. Not just vacations and apartments, but marriage, kids, the life we wanted to build. Jason would casually mention engagement rings he saw in store windows, asking what styles I liked. I imagined him proposing on our Greece trip, something he hinted at when I showed him pictures of Santorini sunsets. Our social life revolved around his college friends who had all settled in Chicago. Nick and Brittany, Tim and his girlfriend Alexis, and Jordan were fixtures in our life. Weekly dinners, weekend outings, holiday celebrations, they became like family. They called us the perfect couple, joking that we made them sick with how in love we were. Our Instagram was filled with couple photos from concerts, restaurants, and weekend trips, always smiling, always looking perfect. Looking back, there were red flags I chose to ignore. Jason occasionally made impulsive purchases, a designer watch or expensive shoes, when his commission checks came in. Sometimes he'd be vague about where he was going after work, claiming drinks with clients but returning home without the usual sales energy. His phone would sometimes ping late at night, and he'd quickly silence it, saying it was just work emails. I trusted him completely, dismissing the occasional doubt as my own insecurity. I was so caught up in our perfect love story, I couldn't see the cracks forming in its foundation. I believed we were building something unbreakable. I never imagined he could betray me so completely. By our third year together, I had saved $4,500 for my Greece trip. Every month, I diligently transferred a portion of my paycheck into that savings account, watching it grow with anticipation. I'd spend lunch breaks researching boutique hotels in Santorini and hidden restaurants in Athens. I kept a document of places I wanted to visit, showing Jason pictures of blue-domed churches and crystal-clear waters, planning what would be the trip of a lifetime. Meanwhile, Jason's work situation had begun to change. The software company restructured their sales territories, and his commission checks became less predictable. He'd come home frustrated, complaining about leads being redirected to other sales reps or quota increases that seemed impossible to reach. I supported him through this, suggesting budget adjustments and offering to cover more of our joint expenses temporarily. I believed in him and our partnership. Around this time, Jason began mentioning a new hire at his company named Amber Rodriguez. Initially, it seemed innocent enough. Amber closed a huge deal today, or Amber knows this great lunch spot near the office. I was happy he had a work friend, especially during this stressful transition. When he described her, he mentioned she was smart and ambitious, qualities I always respected. My own work became increasingly demanding. Our agency landed a major national retail client, and I was leading the launch campaign for their new product line. My days stretched into nights, often returning home after Jason was already asleep. Weekends filled with catching up on emails and preparing presentations. Jason said he understood, but I noticed his supportive texts became less frequent, replaced with short responses and complaints about my absence. The first truly concerning change was when Jason changed his phone password. We had always known each other's passwords, not because we snooped, but because of the trust and openness we shared. One evening, I needed to order food delivery while my phone was charging, and when I picked up his phone, I discovered the password had changed. When I asked about it, he became defensive, claiming he needed more digital privacy and that companies recommended regular password changes for security. Late nights at the office became more frequent. Sales meetings that mysteriously ran until 9 or 10 o'clock. Client dinners I wasn't invited to join. When he came home, he'd be oddly energized rather than tired, smelling faintly of unfamiliar perfume he'd explain away as being from sitting next to someone at the restaurant. The Jason who once texted me details of his day now offered vague summaries when asked. Things became undeniably uncomfortable at a dinner with his friends. Jason had mentioned his work friend Amber might stop by briefly to drop off some documents. Instead, she joined us for the entire evening, sliding into the seat next to Jason. Tall and confident with perfectly highlighted hair, she had inside jokes with Jason I'd never heard, touched his arm when she laughed, and seemed to know details about his day I didn't. When she spoke to me, her questions felt like assessments, asking about my long work hours with thinly veiled judgment. That night, I expressed my discomfort to Jason. His response chilled me. You're being paranoid, Rachel. Amber is a colleague and friend. Maybe if you weren't buried in work all the time, you wouldn't be so insecure. It was the first time he'd turned my career success against me, making me feel guilty for the very accomplishments he'd once celebrated. The following weekend, Jason announced he needed to attend an emergency sales conference in Florida. The details were suspiciously vague, the notice too short for typical corporate planning. When I asked to see the flight itinerary, he claimed the company was handling all arrangements directly. He packed nicer clothes than usual for a business trip, including new swim trunks I'd never seen before. My intuition was screaming that something wasn't right, but I still couldn't bring myself to fully doubt him. We'd built 3 years of trust, of plans, of loving each other. I told myself relationships go through phases, that the distance I felt was temporary, that my work stress was making me paranoid. While Jason was away on his conference, I received only 2 brief texts in 3 days. No photos, no calls, no details about the event. When I called his hotel room one evening, the front desk said he was not registered there. When confronted later, he claimed he'd stayed at a different hotel than originally planned because the conference venue had changed. During this period, my best friend Megan tried to gently raise concerns. Over coffee one Saturday while Jason was gone, she carefully mentioned that she'd noticed changes in how he treated me. "Rachel, you light up when you talk about work, but dim when you talk about Jason lately. That's not how it used to be." I dismissed her observation, defending Jason and our relationship, though her words lingered uncomfortably in my mind. After Jason returned from Florida, I noticed strange charges on our shared credit card statement. Charges from restaurants in Miami I'd never heard him mention, a sunset cruise booking, and a significant charge from a jewelry store. When questioned, Jason explained they were business expenses accidentally charged to the wrong card, promising to submit them for reimbursement. The reimbursement never appeared in our account. Looking back, I realize I was experiencing the slow boil effect, where changes happen gradually enough that you adapt without realizing how far things have shifted from normal. The woman who once prided herself on her independence and intuition was making excuses for increasingly suspicious behavior, desperate to believe in the relationship I thought we had. I never imagined that these troubling signs were just the surface of a much deeper betrayal. The worst was yet to come, and nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. It was a Tuesday morning when my world collapsed. I had a routine of checking my bank accounts every Tuesday, tracking my spending and updating my savings goals. I logged into my bank portal, coffee in hand, expecting to see my Greece fund growing steadily as always. Instead, I nearly dropped my mug when I saw the balance, $827. Last week, it had been $5,327. My heart raced as I frantically searched the transaction history. There it was, transfer to external account, $4,500, 8 days ago. I had never made this transfer. I immediately called the bank in a panic, explaining that my account had been compromised. The customer service representative pulled up the details of the transaction. "Ms. Wilson, this transfer was initiated through your online banking portal using your credentials. It went to an account under the name of Jason Barnes. Do you know this individual?" My stomach dropped. "That's my boyfriend," I whispered, the reality beginning to sink in. "Would you like to report this as fraud?" the representative asked. "I need to speak with him first," I managed to say before ending the call, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Jason had left for work an hour earlier. I sat frozen at our kitchen counter, trying to process what was happening. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe he was planning a surprise, maybe he needed emergency money and forgot to tell me. The excuses sounded hollow even in my own mind. I walked into our home office where Jason often worked in the evenings. His laptop was open, still logged into his email. I had never snooped through his things before, but this was different. For $1,500, my hard-earned money was missing. A notification popped up on his screen. New Instagram photos tagged. Without thinking, I clicked it. The air left my lungs completely as I stared at the images loading on the screen. Jason, tanned and smiling, arm around a woman I recognized as Amber, standing on a pristine white beach with turquoise water behind them. The location tag read Paradise Cove Resort, Bahamas. The timestamp, 4 days ago, during his supposed business conference. My fingers numb, I scrolled through more photos. Jason and Amber at a candlelit dinner, clinking champagne glasses. Jason and Amber parasailing, her arms wrapped around his waist. Jason and Amber posing in front of their oceanfront suite, the room number visible on the door behind them. I couldn't breathe. In one photo, Amber wore a delicate gold necklace with a small sapphire pendant that looked brand new. In another, she sported designer sunglasses I recognized from a store Jason and I had visited together where I'd admired them but decided they were too expensive for my budget. He had bought them for her with my money. A text notification appeared on his laptop, synced from his phone. Amber, still thinking about our amazing week together. You really know how to surprise a girl. Best spontaneous trip ever. The pieces fell into horrifying place. Jason's emergency conference was actually a romantic getaway with Amber, funded by the money I had spent years saving for my dream trip. Money he had stolen from my personal account. Feeling physically ill, I searched deeper. Google Maps history showed searches for most romantic restaurants in Nassau and best beaches for couples in Bahamas. His email contained confirmation for an oceanfront suite with a king bed and private balcony, booked just 2 days after he had access to my computer when I had asked him to help me submit a tax document while I cooked dinner. I found his call history through our shared phone plan account. Countless calls and texts to Amber going back months, often late at night or during times he told me he was working. Some calls lasted hours, during evenings when I worked late. More disturbing discoveries followed. Reviewing our joint account statements, I found smaller, unexplained withdrawals over the past few months that Jason had dismissed as guys' nights out or work expenses. These hadn't triggered my suspicion because they were relatively small amounts and came from our shared account, not my personal savings. Now I saw them for what they were. Test runs before the big theft. The physical reaction hit me all at once. I ran to the bathroom and vomited, my body rejecting the betrayal before my mind could fully process it. Splashing cold water on my face, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back looked like a stranger, pale and shaken, eyes wide with shock and hurt. I spent the next hour methodically documenting everything. Screenshots of the photos, bank statements, phone records, email confirmations. With each piece of evidence, the reality became clearer and more painful. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a one-time mistake. This was calculated, ongoing deception from the man I had planned to spend my life with. Sitting on our bedroom floor surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, I finally allowed myself to break down. Sobs tore through my body as I curled into a ball, clutching my phone with the damning photos still displayed. 3 years of love and trust, shattered by greed and lies. The future I had imagined with Jason disintegrated before my eyes, replaced by the humiliating truth. I had been played for a fool. The worst part wasn't even the stolen money, though that hurt deeply. It was the casual cruelty of it all. The intimate vacation they had enjoyed on my dime. The luxury experiences they had shared while I worked overtime, believing I was building toward our shared future. The complete disregard for my feelings, my trust, my dignity. As the initial shock subsided, another emotion began to take its place. Anger. Not the hot, reactive kind that leads to rash decisions, but a cold, clarifying anger that sharpened my focus and strengthened my resolve. Jason had stolen more than money from me. He had stolen my trust, my time, my dreams. And I was not going to let him get away with it. I stood up, gathered the evidence I had collected, and began to plan my next move. Jason would be home in a few hours, expecting to find the same trusting, unsuspecting girlfriend he had left this morning. He had no idea that everything had changed, that I had seen behind the curtain of his deception. For the first time since we met, I had the advantage. and I intended to use it. I spent the afternoon preparing for Jason's return, rehearsing what I would say, how I would remain calm and controlled despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. I printed bank statements, screenshots of photos, and text messages, organizing them in a folder on the kitchen table. I wanted incontrovertible evidence that would make denial impossible. At 6:30, I heard his key in the lock. Jason walked in, tanned and relaxed, his skin still glowing from the Bahamas sun that my money had paid for. He carried takeout bags and greeted me with a casual "Hey babe," as if everything was normal. As if he hadn't just betrayed me in the most personal way possible. "How was your day?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "Boring. Back-to-back meetings about quarterly targets," he lied effortlessly, unpacking the food containers. "Some client from Houston is being difficult about pricing." "How about you?" "Interesting," I replied. "I made a discovery today." Something in my tone made him look up, his expression cautious, but not yet alarmed. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, the folder closed in front of me. "What kind of discovery?" he asked, attempting a light tone that didn't match the sudden wariness in his eyes. "Why don't you tell me about your business conference in Florida? I'd love to hear the highlights." I maintained eye contact, watching him carefully. His smile faltered slightly. "Not much to tell. Presentations, networking, the usual corporate stuff. Pretty dull, honestly." I nodded slowly, then slid a photo across the table. It showed him and Amber on the beach in the Bahamas, her kissing his cheek while he took the selfie. "Looks like pretty exciting corporate stuff to me." The Bahamas is beautiful this time of year, isn't it? The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then attempted recovery. "Rachel, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like you took a romantic vacation with Amber to the Bahamas." "But please, explain what it actually is." My voice remained unnervingly calm. It was a last-minute work opportunity. Amber and I were selected to represent the company at a client meeting in Nassau. The beach pictures were just during our downtime. His lies came quickly now, rehearsed and ready. I slid another document across the table. My bank statement showing the $4,500 transfer to his account. And this? Was this also a work opportunity? Jason stared at the paper, realization dawning that I had discovered everything. His strategy shifted instantly. "Okay, yes, I took money from your account. I was going to pay you back. Sales have been slow, and I needed to impress a big potential client. Amber has connections in the industry that could help both of us." This was a business investment, Rachel. "A business investment," I repeated slowly. "That's why you booked one hotel room with one bed? That's why you bought her jewelry and designer sunglasses? That's why you two were parasailing and having romantic dinners by candlelight? Business?" I continued placing evidence on the table, one damning piece after another. The hotel confirmation. The dinner reservations for two. The jewelry store receipt. With each document, his lies crumbled further. Finally, when there was nowhere left to hide, Jason's demeanor changed completely. The charming man I thought I knew disappeared, replaced by someone cold and dismissive. "Fine. Yes, Amber and I have been seeing each other. She's exciting and supportive of my career, not constantly buried in work like you are." His words were calculated to hurt. The money situation got out of hand, I admit that. "But you make plenty, Rachel. You'll earn it back in no time." I stared at him, shocked by his callousness. "You stole from me, Jason. You committed fraud. You betrayed my trust in every possible way." He rolled his eyes and laughed. "Relax, you'll get over it. It's just money." Those words hit me like a physical blow. 3 years together, and this was how little he valued me, my trust, my feelings. My hands began to shake with anger. "I want my money back. All of it. And then I want you out of this apartment." My voice was low but firm. Jason's expression hardened. "You're overreacting. We can work through this. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was calculated theft and betrayal over months. He pulled out his phone, texting rapidly. "You're being hysterical. I'm getting some backup here." Within 20 minutes, our apartment filled with Jason's friends. Nick, Tim, and Jordan arrived together, looking confused but automatically standing near Jason in a show of solidarity. He had already crafted his narrative, telling them I was having a meltdown over a misunderstanding. "She found out about a work trip I took and is losing her mind," Jason explained to them, portraying me as irrational and controlling. I tried to show them the evidence to make them understand what had actually happened, but they barely glanced at it. Years of friendship with Jason had created an unshakable loyalty. They suggested I was working too hard, that I needed to relax, that relationships required flexibility and forgiveness. "Come on, Rachel," Nick said condescendingly. "Jason's always been generous with you. So he took a trip, so what? You're acting crazy right now." As I tried to defend myself, Jason's phone rang. He answered on speaker, deliberately letting everyone hear. "Hey, is everything okay? You stopped texting suddenly." Amber's voice filled the room. "Rachel found out about the trip and is having a complete meltdown," Jason replied, looking directly at me. There was a pause, then Amber laughed. "Seriously? Over a vacation? How pathetic. Tell her to grow up. It's not like you two are married." The casual cruelty, the public humiliation in my own home, was overwhelming. Tears streamed down my face, not from sadness, but from pure rage and frustration. "You stole my money," I shouted, no longer able to maintain composure. "For $1,500 that I saved for years." The apartment fell silent for a moment. Even Jason's friends looked uncomfortable at this revelation. "Is that true?" Tim asked quietly. "She's exaggerating," Jason dismissed. "I borrowed some money. I'm good for it." Before anyone could question further, there was a knock at the door. Our neighbors from across the hall, an older couple who had always been kind to us, stood there looking concerned. We heard shouting. The woman said gently, "Is everything okay?" The humiliation deepened. My private pain was becoming a public spectacle. I could see the pity in the neighbors' eyes, the judgment from Jason's friends, the smug satisfaction from Jason himself at having witnesses to my emotional outburst. Jason turned to me, issuing an ultimatum loud enough for everyone to hear. "Either forget about this and we move forward, or we're done. Your choice, Rachel." In that moment, surrounded by people who didn't believe me or care about the truth, I felt utterly defeated. I grabbed my purse and phone, pushed past everyone, and left my own apartment. I could hear laughter behind me as the door closed, Jason already spinning the story of his crazy girlfriend. I drove to Megan's apartment, barely able to see through my tears. She opened the door, took one look at me, and pulled me into a hug without questions. Only then, in the safety of true friendship, did I allow myself to completely break down. That night, as I lay on Megan's couch staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Jason. "You're overreacting. Come home. Everyone thinks you need to calm down. Maybe you should see someone about your jealousy issues. This isn't about the money and you know it." Each message twisted the knife deeper, revealing the true nature of the man I had loved. In the quiet darkness of Megan's living room, I made a promise to myself. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Jason Barnes had no idea what was coming. The morning after the confrontation, I woke up on Megan's couch with swollen eyes, but a clear mind. The initial shock had subsided, replaced by a steely determination. This wasn't just about a betrayal anymore. It was about justice and reclaiming my power. "I need a plan," I told Megan over coffee. Not an emotional reaction, but a strategic response. First, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. This situation required my full attention. Then I made an appointment with my bank for that morning. Dressed professionally to be taken seriously, I met with a bank representative named Marcus, who specialized in fraud cases. I need to document an unauthorized transfer from my account, I explained, sliding across the table my identification, account statements, and evidence that Jason had accessed my computer. Marcus listened attentively, taking detailed notes. This is a serious situation, Ms. Wilson. Since you know the individual who took the funds, you have several options. We can flag this as fraud, which would trigger an investigation. You can also pursue civil action to recover the funds. I chose both options. Marcus helped me file an official claim and provided documentation of the unauthorized transfer. He also advised me to change all my passwords immediately and place a fraud alert on my credit report. My next stop was lunch with my friend Alicia, who worked as a lawyer specializing in financial disputes. Over salads that I barely touched, I laid out the entire situation. That's textbook financial abuse, Rachel, Alicia said firmly. And it's illegal. Taking funds from your account without permission is theft, regardless of your relationship. She helped me draft a formal demand letter for the full amount plus legal fees, explaining that small claims court would be an option if Jason refused to repay. She also suggested documenting any joint purchases we had made during our relationship to establish clear ownership in case of disputes. And Rachel, she added gently, you should check your credit report. Financial abusers often open credit cards or loans in their partner's names. Her warning proved prophetic. That afternoon, I discovered 2 credit cards had been opened in my name 6 months earlier. The statements went to a P.O. box I knew nothing about. The outstanding balance totaled over $3,000, with charges from restaurants, hotels, and gift shops I had never visited, likely places Jason had taken Amber. The discovery sent me down a research rabbit hole. I spent hours reading about financial abuse in relationships, learning it was far more common than I had realized. Forums and support groups were filled with stories from people who had experienced similar betrayals. I wasn't alone, and more importantly, there were established pathways to recovery. Armed with knowledge and growing confidence, I executed the next phase of my plan. I waited until Jason texted that he would be working late again, then enlisted Megan, her brother Tyler, and my sister Jessica, who had immediately driven down from Minneapolis when she heard what happened. Together, we moved my essential belongings out of the apartment I had shared with Jason. We worked efficiently, focusing on important documents, irreplaceable sentimental items, and enough clothing and personal items to sustain me for several weeks. I left furniture and shared purchases behind for now, focusing only on what was unquestionably mine. In the process, I discovered more evidence of Jason's deception. Hidden in his desk drawer were receipts for gifts for Amber dating back nearly 8 months, some purchased with our joint account. I found printed travel itineraries for weekend trips they had taken together while I worked overtime. There was even a brochure for engagement rings with certain styles circled, a cruel mockery of the future he had pretended to want with me. Each discovery strengthened my resolve. This wasn't a momentary lapse of judgment or a one-time mistake. This was calculated, ongoing deception from someone who had claimed to love me. Back at Megan's apartment, I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every financial aspect of our relationship. Joint purchases, individual contributions to shared expenses, and most importantly, a complete accounting of money Jason had taken without permission. The total was staggering, far exceeding the $4,500 from my Greece fund. While my immediate circle of friends rallied around me, I also began reconnecting with people I had unintentionally distanced during my relationship with Jason. Former colleagues, college friends, women from my yoga class. I realized how isolated I had become, how my world had gradually narrowed to revolve around Jason and his friends. Rebuilding these connections felt like reclaiming pieces of myself I had forgotten. My parents, who lived in Minnesota, offered both emotional and financial support. Come home for a while, my mother urged during our daily calls. Take some time to heal. But I knew running away wasn't the answer. I needed to face this situation head-on in the city and career I had built for myself. With each day that passed, I grew stronger and more strategic. I consulted with a financial advisor about protecting my assets moving forward. I met with a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma, beginning the emotional work of processing what had happened. I even spoke with a private investigator friend of Alicia's who offered advice on gathering evidence. Throughout this period, Jason alternated between love bombing and threats. One day, he'd send flowers to Megan's apartment with notes begging forgiveness. The next, he'd text that he would ruin me if I pursued fraud charges. I documented everything but responded to nothing. 2 weeks after the initial confrontation, I felt prepared for the final phase of my response. I had built a support system, secured my finances, gathered comprehensive evidence, and developed a clear action plan. I was no longer the devastated, reactive woman who had fled her own apartment in tears. I was methodical, focused, and absolutely determined to hold Jason accountable. "Are you ready for this?" Megan asked as we reviewed the final preparations. I nodded, feeling a calm certainty that had been absent for weeks. More than ready. He thought I would just get over it, that I would forgive and forget because that's what I've always done. He has no idea who he's dealing with now. Jason Barnes had taken advantage of my trust and love for the last time. The woman he was about to face wasn't the accommodating girlfriend who had excused his red flags for years. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she was coming for everything she was owed. 3 weeks after discovering Jason's betrayal, I set my plan in motion. The first official action came from my bank, which formally processed the fraud claim I had filed. They contacted Jason directly, informing him that the transfer of $4,500 from my account was being investigated as unauthorized and fraudulent. Simultaneously, Alicia helped me file a police report for identity theft and unauthorized use of my personal financial information. While the detective warned me that relationship-based financial crimes can be complicated to prosecute, he assured me that the report created an official record of the incident and could support civil proceedings. "Financial abuse leaves a paper trail," he explained. "That works in your favor." My next move was more personal. I contacted Jason's parents in Seattle, people I had met several times and genuinely liked. I carefully crafted an email explaining the situation, attaching key pieces of evidence including bank statements, photos from the Bahamas trip, and documentation of the credit cards opened in my name. I wasn't trying to turn them against their son out of vengeance. I wanted them to understand the full picture before Jason inevitably gave them his manipulated version. Their response came within hours, a video call request that I accepted with trepidation. Jason's mother's face appeared on screen, her eyes red from crying. "Rachel, we're so sorry," she began, her husband nodding solemnly beside her. "We raised him better than this. We're absolutely appalled by his behavior." Their genuine shock and support brought tears to my eyes. They asked detailed questions, wanting to understand everything that had happened. When I finished explaining, Jason's father spoke firmly. "We've already called him. He tried to downplay it, but we made it clear this is unacceptable. We're coming to Chicago next week, and we expect him to make this right." All of it. Their allyship was unexpected but deeply validating. Having Jason's own parents acknowledge the severity of his actions removed any lingering self-doubt about whether I was overreacting. The following day, the demand letter Alicia had prepared was delivered to Jason by certified mail. It detailed the full amount owed, including the stolen savings, unauthorized credit card charges, legal fees, and additional damages for emotional distress. The letter specified a 30-day deadline for full repayment before further legal action would be taken. Jason's initial response was predictably dismissive. He shared photos of the letter with his friends in a group chat, making jokes about my dramatic escalation and assuring them this was just Rachel being Rachel. One of his friends actually forwarded me the chat, uncomfortable with how Jason was portraying the situation now that he knew more details. The turning point came 3 days later when Jason's bank notified him that his accounts were temporarily frozen pending the fraud investigation. The carefully constructed facade of his life began to crumble rapidly. His credit score plummeted as I removed myself from joint accounts and reported the fraudulent credit cards. Financial institutions take fraud allegations seriously, and Jason was experiencing the consequences in real time. The calls started that evening. First to me, which I didn't answer. Then to Megan, my sister, even my parents in Minnesota. When those went unanswered, he began calling mutual friends, attempting to recruit intermediaries to reason with me. His desperation grew with each passing day. A critical moment came when Amber herself reached out to me. Her tone had completely changed from the mocking confidence during the confrontation. "I had no idea he took your money," she wrote in a lengthy email. "He told me he got a bonus at work and wanted to surprise me with a trip. I'm disgusted and I've ended things with him. I'm so sorry for my role in this, even though I was also deceived." Whether her apology was sincere or self-protective didn't matter to me. What mattered was that Jason was losing his support system as the truth spread. Even his closest friends began to distance themselves after I finally agreed to meet with them, walking them through the evidence Jason had prevented them from seeing during the confrontation. Tim's face fell as he reviewed the bank statements and hotel receipts. "He told us you were jealous about a business trip," Nick said quietly. "We had no idea he actually stole from you." "Or that he was cheating for months," Jordan added, looking genuinely disturbed. The isolation that Jason had orchestrated during our confrontation was now working against him. As people learned the facts, they withdrew their support, leaving him increasingly alone. Jason's parents arrived in Chicago as promised, staying in a hotel rather than with their son, a clear statement of where they stood. They insisted on meeting with me first, reiterating their support and apologizing again for their son's actions. When they finally met with Jason, the conversation apparently went poorly. "He's still not taking full responsibility," his mother told me afterward, looking exhausted. "But we've made it clear that he will face this, with our support or without it." As the deadline specified in the demand letter approached, Jason's communication became increasingly desperate. The voicemails accumulated on my phone, his tone evolving from angry to pleading. "Rachel, please call me back. We need to discuss this reasonably. You've made your point. Let's talk about a payment plan. My accounts are frozen. My credit is ruined. Amber left me. What more do you want?" The final voicemail arrived at 3 in the morning, his voice breaking with emotion. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for everything. Please call me back. I can't lose everything like this. I need your help. Please, Rachel, please." 2 days before the deadline, I received notification of a small claims court filing in my inbox. Jason had discovered I had already prepared the paperwork, ready to file if he missed the deadline. The public nature of court proceedings meant his actions would become part of permanent legal record, visible to future employers, partners, and anyone who searched his name. That same afternoon, a certified cashier's check arrived by courier. The full amount requested in the demand letter, down to the penny. Accompanying it was a signed agreement, prepared by Alicia, acknowledging the debt and the nature of the funds. Jason had finally understood that I wasn't bluffing, that my methodical approach would continue until justice was served. The moment I held that check in my hands, a weight lifted from my shoulders. This wasn't just about recovering money, it was about reclaiming my power and holding someone accountable for violating my trust. Jason had believed I would be too emotional, too intimidated, or too devoted to him to fight back effectively. He had severely underestimated me. As news of the resolution spread through our social circle, Jason's professional reputation also began to suffer. Clients who had heard rumors of fraud allegations became hesitant to work with him. His company started an internal investigation into potential misuse of company resources, specifically whether he had falsified any business expenses related to his trips with Amber. The reckoning wasn't just financial, it was comprehensive. Every aspect of the carefully constructed life Jason had built, often at my expense, was unraveling. And through it all, I remained focused, strategic, and utterly unmoved by his increasingly desperate attempts to regain control. The tables had turned completely. The man who had dismissed my pain with "you'll get over it" was now the one begging for mercy, for understanding, for another chance. But unlike him, I understood the value of trust once broken, and I had no intention of giving him the opportunity to break mine again. With the settlement check deposited and the signed agreement safely stored with my attorney, I began the next chapter of my life. The financial aspect of Jason's betrayal had been resolved, but the emotional healing would take much longer. This was the beginning of a journey back to myself, to the strong, independent woman I had been before allowing someone else to dim my light. My first priority was rebuilding financial security. I closed all compromised accounts and opened new ones at a different bank. I set up robust credit monitoring services and created stronger security protocols for all my financial information. The fraud alerts would remain on my credit report for years, a persistent reminder to remain vigilant. With the recovered funds plus what I had continued saving during the ordeal, my Greece fund was now larger than before. 6 months after the settlement, I booked the trip I had dreamed of for years, but with a significant change. I would be traveling alone. The 2-week journey through Athens, Santorini, and Crete became a symbol of my reclamation and independence. Standing on a cliff in Santorini, watching the sunset paint the whitewashed buildings in gold and pink, I felt a profound sense of peace. This moment belonged entirely to me, earned through my own resilience and determination. I sent a selfie to Megan with the caption, "This is what healing looks like." The distance from Chicago and from the memories of betrayal gave me valuable perspective. Looking back, I could now recognize the red flags I had ignored from the beginning. Jason's occasional financial irresponsibility that I had excused. The subtle ways he had isolated me from friends who might have seen through him sooner. The gradual erosion of my independence as our lives intertwined. These insights weren't about blaming myself, but about ensuring I would never overlook such warnings again. Upon returning from Greece, I channeled my experience into constructive action. I began attending a support group for survivors of financial abuse, discovering a community of people with similar stories. Eventually, I started co-leading these sessions, sharing the practical strategies that had helped me recover both financially and emotionally. Financial abuse thrives in secrecy and shame, I would tell new members. By speaking our truths, we reclaim our power. This work led to volunteer opportunities with local women's organizations, conducting workshops on financial literacy and independence. I created resources I wished I had had during my own ordeal, checklists for protecting personal finances and relationships, red flags of financial control, and step-by-step guides for recovery after abuse. Professionally, I continued to thrive. My marketing agency recognized my dedication despite personal challenges and offered me a more senior position with greater responsibility and compensation. The confidence I had gained through standing up for myself translated into more assertive leadership and creative risk-taking in my career. My personal boundaries underwent a complete transformation. I developed clear, non-negotiable standards for any relationship, romantic or otherwise. I became vigilant about respecting my own time, energy, and resources, recognizing these as valuable assets not to be squandered on undeserving people. Dating again was a gradual process. For nearly a year, I focused exclusively on my own healing and growth. When I eventually decided to open that door again, I approached relationships with both greater caution and greater honesty. I was transparent about my experience with new partners, watching carefully for their reactions. The right ones responded with empathy and understanding, never with defensiveness or dismissal. One unexpected development was my continued relationship with Jason's mother, Sandra. Her initial support during the crisis evolved into a genuine friendship independent of her son. "You showed incredible strength and dignity," she told me during one of our monthly phone calls. I admire the woman you are. This connection reminded me that family ties are complex and that supporting accountability doesn't always mean severing all connections. Jason himself made periodic attempts to re-enter my life. Emails on birthdays and holidays. Requests to meet for closure. Each time, I maintained the firm boundaries I had established, responding either with brief acknowledgement or not at all. His persistence gradually waned as he realized the door was permanently closed. Through therapy, I came to understand that forgiveness wasn't about absolving Jason of responsibility or allowing him back into my life. It was about releasing the hold that anger and resentment had on my own heart. This wasn't a quick or linear process, but over time, I found that thoughts of him carried less emotional charge, occupying less and less space in my mind. 2 years after the betrayal, I received a final email from Jason. Unlike his previous attempts at reconciliation, this one contained no requests or expectations. I've been in therapy for a year now, he wrote. I'm finally beginning to understand the damage I caused. You deserved better, and I'm truly sorry. I don't expect forgiveness or response. I just wanted you to know that your strength forced me to face myself, and I'm working to become someone different than the person who hurt you. I never replied, but I felt a sense of completion reading those words. My journey wasn't about his redemption, but there was a certain symmetry in knowing that my refusal to be a victim had catalyzed change beyond my own life. The woman I became through this experience was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. I developed an unwavering trust in my own intuition and abilities. I built a community of authentic relationships based on mutual respect and support. I reclaimed my financial power and used my experience to help others do the same. The betrayal that once seemed like it might destroy me instead became the foundation for a more authentic life. The money Jason stole was returned, but the true victory was in discovering that my worth could never be measured in dollars, and my happiness would never again depend on someone else's integrity. If you've ever experienced betrayal or financial abuse, know that you're not alone and recovery is possible. The path forward isn't about erasing what happened, but about writing a new story where that chapter doesn't define the entire book. Trust your instincts, demand accountability, and never settle for less than you deserve. Have you ever had to rebuild trust after a betrayal? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's challenges. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from what hurts you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and healing on yours.